Hey guys, it's Audra and welcome back to 365 Projects. Obviously, the thumbnail is from a different day than today. So that thumbnail is from the original video I had filmed late February about the books I had read in January because I was already behind and then neglected to post it, and then the coronavirus started and school got canceled, and it's just been one giant snowball effect. And so instead of getting rid of that entire video, I think what I'm going to go ahead and do today is just share with you all the books that I read in January, February, and March of this year that were 5-star books that I would recommend to you. And so I will send it off to past Audra, oblivious of what was going to get ready to go down in the world, and let her share the 5, I believe, books that were 5 stars in January. We then have Here to Stay by Sarah Farzan, and I read this like super quick, like I think in less than 48 hours, which is not normal for me on a weekend. And this is a book about a young basketball player whose name, I forget, is Bajan, and there definitely is a cyberbullying incident that releases a picture of him looking like a terrorist. And obviously, as an Iranian American teen, that's not going to fly. And it's like the trying to figure out who did it and his story with his friendship groups. And I just fell in love with this character. He was hilarious. He was snarky. He had all these like pinpointed arguments to like move this conversation forward, and I just feel like it was really well done, and I highly recommend this one. It was a great sports YA book that also talked about some very important topics. The next one I would like to talk about is Dry by Neil and Jared Schusterman. This one is a dystopian novel that is all about water running out on the coast. And I thought it was just like water running out everywhere, where in fact the water had been turned off because of like this disagreement within the government. And so this entire like huge city runs out of water, and it's the chaos. And oh my gosh, this gave me so much anxiety to read, but it was done so very well about how these kids survive and like all the trauma they experience to get to this body of water, like a pond or a lake or something at the end, because of the mass chaos of stores running out of water, of people basically attacking one another for that resource, and like whether or not they give pets the water, how do they ration this. And it was over the course of like 4 days inside the story, but it was done really well. It gave me a lot of anxiety, and I gave it a 5 stars. I've seen a lot of reviews that are kind of the opposite of that, so that was kind of interesting to have a differing opinion than what I've seen from most other people, but I did really enjoy that book. The next book I want to talk about is The Unfortunates, and unfortunately, I've already had to take that back to the library. This was a book that was a possibility for the award list for next year for the high school kids, and it did make it. And it's very short. It was kind of pitched with the main character with affluenza, and it very much is that. And so you find out along the way what he has done and how it affects his life, but then also it's a survival story because he goes on this like hiking trip and falls down in this cave, and there's also a school that is there at the same time as he goes down into like this ravine type thing, and he finds 4 other kids that are down there, and it's how they survive and how like somebody is coming after them this entire time, and people end up like being grossly murdered. And it was just like, it was very repetitive for a short book, and the entire time I'm like, all right, it's probably like going to be a 2 for me, just because of the survival aspects. A lot of it didn't make sense because it uses like not nature terminology, but like how these cave structures work and how they get through it, and that just wasn't piquing my interest very much. So the entire time I thought it was a 2, but the twist at the end, I was shook. And I don't say that often. Like, I gave this 5 stars at the end. The entire time I thought it was going to be a 2, and then it pulled out with a surprise and took it to a whole nother level. And just that shock factor, I think, rose it up to a 5, to where I would definitely recommend you giving it a try, because it's a super short read and it's different from anything I've read except one other book, but I can't tell you what that is because it will kind of give away how the twist works. But yeah, great book, that one. We next have a book that I'm actually reading for 2 different book clubs, because I started reading it for my Dragon Boat Book Club, I think. Yeah, Dragon Boat Book Club. We picked this out, and then I started it. I was like, oh my gosh, my staff at work would love this too because I love thrillers, and that is No Exit by Taylor Adams. This thriller is insane. It starts off where most thrillers end. So this girl is heading back home to see her mother. She finds out her mother has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and so she's getting ready for surgery, and so the daughter runs for it in their car, but she gets stopped at an exit because snow has shut down the highway. She pulls off, and as she is like looking around at the other cars there, she finds a child inside of a cage. And so she goes inside knowing that one of these people is going to be the person who has done this, and obviously she needs to be afraid of this person. And right away you figure out who it is, like in the first 50 pages. So it's not that short. So the entire time you're like, oh my gosh, like this is where most books end. But it's basically like her trying to survive this night, getting this child free, and all the twists and turns along the way. Even the last page, like we were talking with the Dragon Boat Book Club, like I was so upset about the ending, and then it flipped, and then I was like, what? Shocking. So obviously it's a thriller. I don't want to give away too much. Just read this one if you have not read it yet. It is a very, very fast-paced book. And the last 5-star book of the month, which I think might be my favorite of all of these, is the Book of Essie. And again, this is one that I've seen like really polarizing reviews of, and I think I enjoyed it so much because of my personal background within the church community and how these evangelical Christians kind of set themselves up on this like high pedestal, and seeing that become a conversation and this girl taking it back. So anyways, I got way ahead of myself. This is obviously Essie, and she, this story kind of reminds me of the Duggar family and the fact that they have all these kids, and it's a pastor that they've created like this whole TV show, and it's the story of their lives, and they grow up, like some of them are born on television and they grow up just like that family very similarly does. And then Essie is, I believe, 14, and she is pregnant, and the person who you think would be the culprit, I guess you would say, it ends up having a twist to that as well. And so what they do to hide this pregnancy is that they have her get married off to a young boy from her school, and how that helps him. There's just a lot of like really like pinpointed conversations about the double standards within this church and within this family, and ultimately this young girl getting her life back, and how she is able to take her control away from the people who have kind of exposed her to all these things her entire life, and then want to turn it around to use it against her. And so it was well done. It is a YA. It's another one that I'm kind of surprised that it made it to our award list for next year for the high school, but I am pleasantly surprised to say that this will be a great conversation for kids in our area to see happen within the pages of a book. And when we got into February, there were actually no 5-star reads. So we skipped that entire month, and I have 4 to share that I read in March. The first one being The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. Now, first of all, this is the author of The Unfortunates that I've already talked about, so she is on fire in my eyes for sure. I think there's another book that I still need to read from her. And the theme of this book kind of matches the Book of Essie, about a girl who's getting her power back, except this time it is in a dystopian setting for sure. So on these girls' 16th year of life, the community thinks that they are like have these powers to like take over men and basically be seductive. And so they send them off for an entire year to basically survive in this community, and there's like people that hunt them, and they all go crazy, and it's just kind of about that kind of mentality that leads a dystopian government that doesn't seem all that far off. But this was very, very well done, and I can't wait to see if it ends up on future award lists because I've heard nothing but people raving about it, and rightfully so. The second 5-star book that I read was The One by John Mars. This is kind of another dystopian. Well, not kind of. It is, at least for right now. So this is an adult novel that is very fast-paced, and it's told from, I believe, 5 points of view when this society that's much like present day creates this dating app. And this dating app is all based off of genetics. And so you take this, like, I'm assuming like a blood work test, and they match you to your one. And so now with this, it's breaking up relationships, and people are meeting that should not have ever met. And it's all of these like people who have very distinct stories. Things go awry. There's murder, there's mayhem. Like, it is a very fast-paced and great read. The audiobook is also very good because it is full casted. Each character has a different voice, so I would recommend that one as well. And lastly, I have to share with you 2 books that go together. The first one is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. This received 4 stars, but the sequel to it got 5 stars. These books have been BookTube darlings for a while, and I have just now gotten around to them because That Awkward Teacher from Teachergram recommended them, and I already had them, so I abandoned everything I was supposed to read in March and went with these at the end of the month after school was called off for COVID-19. And these are about a hockey town in Canada, which normally wouldn't be my thing. And it's all about the violence and the abuse that goes on within this community. And it's very intriguing to me how Frederick Bachman is, I believe, a Swedish writer, and so all of his work has been translated. And when I read work that has been translated from a different language, normally, there's naturally going to be those things that just seem a little bit off, or grammar does not get translated correctly type of thing. This is done so well, and the writing is so amazing that it blows my mind, like how much more beautiful it has to be in its original language. It was also a very hard read for me. There is a lot of conversation and topics around grief and the loss of a child, which hits home, as I've talked about before, with my family. And it describes what that looks like for parents to be grieving the loss of a child. And since I've seen that before, and I've experienced that as a sibling, watching parents go through that, and then just having lost myself, like this, there were some points that I had to set it down and be like, oh man, that is like spot on in a way I have not read in a long time. So definitely going to be a trigger warning for grief and also abuse, sexual assault. So tread lightly with those, but I mean, they're such great books that I do recommend these as well, especially if you are looking for more than one book to read during this time. So there are 9 books that I'm recommending that were 5-star reads for me. Hopefully it's a wide range of genres and formats and age audiences that at least one of them could be a 5-star for you as well. Please leave any 5-star books you have read recently down below, and I would love to check them out. I definitely could use some more books probably to get on my iPad or my iPhone, because this quarantine is continuing to go longer and longer. We now have had canceled school for the remainder of the school year, which is completely understandable. I just hope that everybody is doing well and staying safe and staying healthy. I wish you all the best, and I will talk to you soon in another video later this week. So have a great day.